MP Douglas Carswell, you must be cock-a-hoop, are you, Douglas? This is exactly what you wanted?
I'm pretty excited. I've been pushing for this for all my adult life. I feel so strongly about it, I was prepared to give up a safe Conservative seat in Call a by-election, and here it is, a government that actually wants us to take us outside the European Union. It's pretty exciting.
Is this enough, from what you're getting, the inferences that you're hearing, to ensure that she's on the right path, as far as you're concerned?
Let's wait and see what she actually says. Let's look at the small print. But there are three key things in this that I want to hear. Number one, that we're free as a country to strike trade deals with the rest of the world, because that's where the growth is. Most of the economic growth out there isn't in the European Union. We've got to be free to have those trade deals with the rest of the world. That necessarily means pulling out of the single market and the customs union. We need to make sure that we are no longer subject to the jurisdiction of any European court or legislature. That, again, necessarily means coming out of the single market. And also, thirdly, we need to have a sensible system of immigration. We need to be able to control immigration, but at the same time allow people with the skills that we need to come here. And I think we can do that.
Open Britain seem to be suggesting, who are obviously campaigning for us to stay within the single market, seem to be suggesting that she's raising the white flag here, that actually this is quite limited in its ambition, and she could have said, well, let's try and stay in the single market, but we don't want to have freedom of movement, etc. So why aren't we tilting at that and trying to go for a better deal?
I'm sorry that some of the rich bankers and lobbyists and public intellectuals who are on the side of Remain are still trying to fight those battles. I want to see this government work with those sensible people who voted Remain, who actually want to create a new consensus. There are all sorts of ways in which we could be good neighbours and cooperate with the EU. We need, for example, our universities to continue to work with the EU. And during the referendum, I heard some really good points from the Remain side that actually changed my mind on that issue. Defence and security, intelligence cooperation. Terrorists are a threat to Germany, to France, to Britain. We can cooperate, but let's cooperate on the basis of bilateral agreements as equal partners, not supplicants to Brussels.
But they may have voted to leave the European Union, but they didn't vote to leave the European Union at any cost. I mean, if they are going to take a huge whack to their take-home pay or whatever, they're going to be buying a lot less for their money in the supermarket, and it's put down at us leaving the single market, then they're not going to be as sympathetic to
with great respect, in the 6 months since we voted to leave, the economy has grown faster and more jobs have been created.
Yet, though,
well,
have we?
You keep, with respect, saying this. Many people were saying that if we vote to leave, it would lead to economic calamity. On the contrary, in the 6 months since we voted to leave, the economy has done better, not only than any Eurozone economy, but better than the British economy did in the 6 months before we voted to leave. I think we have to ask ourselves, if we want to prosper, we need those free trade agreements with the rest of the world. When we leave, 85% of the world's economic activity will take place outside the Eurozone, and 100% of the world's growth will be happening outside the Eurozone. We need those agreements so that we can prosper in future. Yes, the Eurozone will continue to be important to the British economy, but actually there's a whole world out there that we need to open our markets up to.
So obviously the inference is that we're leaving the single market. Would you like her to say, quite simply, quite clearly, we're leaving the customs union as well?
I think it's pretty obvious that if you're not going to be bound by decisions of European courts or European parliaments, you're going to be outside both the customs union and the single market. I'm genuinely surprised that this is regarded as news. It was news on the 24th of June, but actually, logically, if you're outside the jurisdiction of European parliaments and European courts, you have to be outside the customs union.
OK, well, Douglas Carswell, thank you very much indeed for your